Do you want a little louder?
Can you hear me this way? Okay.
No.
So, I'll speak on here. Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight in this semi-cold weather, but it's, after the snowstorm, so New Yorkers are typically really grumpy at this point, but that you made it as an accomplishment. And it's also a sign, right, that we are all here for something really, really special. So I want to first start by saying thank you to Books of Wonder for allowing us to have this space for the night.
Woo!
Say gay. Just no swear words. Swear words.
Yeah.
He says into the microphone, can I say?
I did say that into the microphone, so that word will be used elsewhere. So right, this space that we are all sharing to celebrate the book launch of Jen Polish's Luna and Lost Boy Found Boy. So that's why we're here today. So let's again give a round of applause for that. And I also want to thank Jen for allowing me the honor to speak, right, on her behalf.
I'm going to fight you on who's honored.
I'm honored, right? So again, thank you for having me here and speak on your behalf. I'm honored, genuinely. So let me start with my pre-scripted speech, because if not, I would forget what I'm saying, and I'd be, so we don't want that. So right, I have the honor of saying that I was there when Luna was just an idea. Jen and I on beaches, screaming like children as the waves beat us down. And as the sun burned our skin, bouncing ideas between one another, trying to imagine our novels in the world. Hearing about Sadie, trees communicating through ground rumblings, dreaming, dragons and lesbians, right? In the polluted waters of Coney Island was everything for me. And I watched as an idea, a day on the beach, a dream, evolved into a world, a book launch, a book. More than that, I watched as a friend evolved into a best friend, a poor grad student into a poor grad student who is a writer and published. And Luna is the result of such transformations. Our struggles, our conversations, our outbursts, our crying, all the waves against us too. A world that strangely enough reflects the writer who created it for us. A world of connections, of being with one another through our differences. A world where our hearts lead us forward, leading us forward to love and to freedom. Luna is their gift to us, and that is what Jen is, a gift. A writer, a person, a friend who gives all that they can to love you, to make you laugh, to be there for you, to bless you with worlds and stories and words. That is what it means to be a writer, to give us beauty, and Jen does just that. So again, I am honored and privileged to be up here today to introduce you to a writer I love, to a writer I admire, to a writer I stand over, Jen Polish.
So I'm mad at him. First of all, because he made me cry, and second of all, because he didn't mention that he just got an agent.
Woo!
And so we will roll reverse very, very soon, and this will be his event very, very soon. So that's first. So that's also why I'm mad at you. So, this is the first night that I've touched this. I want to reflect Marcos's gratitude for each other, for you. But also 2 Books of Wonder. Fun fact, Eric, I don't even know where she is. Hi, you're right straight in front of me. Hey, babe. Erica and I got engaged right in that there spot. I was quite nervous. She said yes. So
It's a hard maybe.
Okay, I see you, honey. Let it be noted that one of my alleged best friends is high-fiving her for saying that. So, I am going to dive in. My teaching genes are kicking in, and so I'm going to outline what we'll do for you guys. So I'm going to read for a little bit, hopefully not enough to bore you, and then Marcos and I are going to have a bit of a conversation. Hopefully he won't make me cry again. I don't know if our friendship could sustain it. And then we are going to open up for a conversation with you all. And buy the book in the front, and I can sign them up here. You can ask Marcos about his writing and his having an agent, because author. So, I am going to, I have not opened really this thing yet. I am going to read a little bit of Luna, with a child, very appropriately. For Erica. Let it be noted that Cassie muttered gay. Chapter 1. The night hangs over us, in us, and I shiver a little in the cold. Even in the safety of my disguise, I swallow loudly. Lyrian shoots me a look, pawing snow away from the packed dirt of the tread with her front hoof. We both stare at the ground ahead of us, our ears straining for the signal that will indicate that we can proceed with our plan. We only have until the moon starts setting to infiltrate and sabotage the monarchy's weapon shipment. A small thumping ahead of us, in the clearing where the caravan has curled in on itself, gives us the sign we're waiting for. No need to hang back anymore, you two, Osley tells us through the beating of cord paws. Sadie, the free spell worked. Come see. Lyrian meets my eyes before I reach down to receive permission from the grass for us to move forward. Her hoofs and my feet barely make a sound as we slip across the thick layer of snow past the first wagon and the first pair of magically frozen guards. I pause to pat one lightly on the shoulder. He went out of range. It was so rude. He won't wake, not as long as my groans are holding their freeze spell on the encampment. But in this weather, the small dribble of drool on his chin will be stuck to his face when we're done here. Osley stamps Cord feet impatiently, Cord long rabbit ears twitching with irritation, as Lyrian bends way down to move the other guards' temporarily stiff fingers into a position that would for sure offend Mom. Do I seriously look like them? I whisper. Yep, spit an image. With your wings tucked away, Sadie, you look exactly like a non. I arch an eyebrow at the way she so casually refers to us humans as nons. Non-fairies, non-centaurs, non-Grovian. Not like us. Except I kind of am like nons too. Lyra pauses to consider me, running her fingers through her reddish hair. Except, probably you're uglier. I roll my eyes and suppress a grin, not bothering to remind her that the front half of centaurs' bodies pretty much look like nons too. Osley's thumps grow more insistent. Sadie, we're on a mission. Get Lyrian over here. All right, we're coming. I give Lyrian a sharp tug, and we follow Osley as he leaps toward the heart of the coiled wagons. The air itself is crystallized with particles of dirt and flakes of snow, all hanging suspended around us, like bubbles floating in the ocean. There's a fire pit in the middle of the encampment, but it too is still, with flames frozen in mid-caress of the tree flesh it consumes, still mid-sparkle, mid-crackle. The closer we get, the harder it is to breathe. The freeze spell has the energy so deeply entangled, it feels like I'm walking through nectar. I live even deeper than I usually do when I'm forced to walk. A sharp smack from behind the fire pit makes our cautious steps turn into an awkward run and a graceful gallop. We round a bend in the encampment's wagons to see Mom and Mama, hovering over two chained fairies and their frozen non-guards. The fairy prisoners look like they're from the Samp, a marshy province a few days' journey from the forest. The Sampians don't look much older than Lyrian and me. They're Nears, like us, but their wings are hidden away inside metal clamps, their necks connected by a piercing necklace. Their ankles and wrists, too, are chained together, and they've been propped up back to back to sleep outside on the snow, while most of the guards are around the fire or tucked into the relative warmth of their wagons. One of the Sampians is flailing around, the chains from his wrists and ankles tugging on his fellow prisoner. threatening to topple both her over and whip her with their force. Mama's webbed hand is on her cheek. She looks like she's just gotten smacked with flesh or metal, I can't tell. My stomach is as shaky as my bare fingers. One of the prisoners is reaching out to Mama, apologizing for her partner in chains, crying softly, explaining that he can't help it, that it's not his fault. Mama dodges another blow. Both of his eyelids are closed, relaxed, but his body is the opposite. Mom is trying to calm him, like she tries to calm me when my heart threatens to fall out of my throat. He's sleeping, yet he's moving about in his chains like... I step closer in a daze, my attention on nothing but the Sampian boy. His wings are in those clamps, so he can't move them except by thrashing his entire back around, so to compensate, he's flapping his golden brown arms about, as much as his chains will let him, just like a sparrow does when she's taking flight. Soon enough, the motion of his arms even out, like they're catching the wind underneath them, rising. I don't realize I've stopped breathing until all my breath bursts out of me in one massive, cloudy white exhale, staying in the freeze spell instead of dissipating like it normally would. I step through the clouds so my attention doesn't have to leave the sight in front of me. My mouth is desert dry. The imprisoned Sampian can dream, like me. No wonder he's in chains. Well, hello.
Let me just start by saying, right, that your writing is like a lullaby in the way you read it. Right, it's entrancing.
You should hear him read.
No, like, it's, you know, I was listening to it, it was like music. So I want to definitely praise you on just the writing itself, if that's what
Thank
we're
you,
talking about. But I'm curious to know, right, so Luhnob is a rich, luscious world, right? It is deeply complicated with tons of different events happening at the same time, but how did this world come about to you, right? How did Luhnob come about? Where were the ideas for it?
I should just give the microphone to Cassie because she's just going to say gay and that's the answer. I'm going to answer with a question. It's the teacher thing. Who knows Once Upon a Time, the TV show? Oh, wow, that was enthusiastic. I know where my students are. So, if you don't know the show Once Upon a Time, it is a modern mashup of fairy tales, right? And how does one say? The two main characters are both women, and were one of them a man, the structure of the show, they'd totally be together. For those of you who know the show, I'm of course talking about Emma and Regina, Swan Queen, and that's where Luhnob came from, because we don't get to see lesbian enemies to lovers stories. We don't, and that's what it would have been on Once Upon a Time. We don't get to see tropes at all. And, you know, a lot of times in mainstream publishing, they'll say, "Oh, don't do this trope, don't do that trope. Tropes are dead. Move on from tropes. Make something unique." And yeah, we can make something unique. I'm reading right now a book by C.B. Lee called Not Your Sidekick, and holy wow, is it the most unique view of a modern sort of superhero thing ever. It's amazing. But we also deserve our tropes, right? So for me, I want tropes. You know, tropes are not over for people who are pushed out of mainstream fiction. Tropes are not over for people who don't get to see ourselves in mainstream fiction. So I wanted lesbian enemies to lovers, so I made it. Cassie could have said it shorter.
You know, that's interesting, this idea, right, of kind of taking back the tropes, right, that are, we want them all, right? Like, we want the cliche lesbian love story. Like, we all want it. And, right, I think your characters, right, if we're talking about Sadie and Evelyn, they almost have that kind of superheroic selflessness to them, right, that
Sadie tries, poor thing.
tries, right, but it's there. And right, I was curious to know, right, how, you know, that trope maybe of the superhero or of some of these other ones apply to Sadie and Evelyn, right, and the other characters as well.
Yeah, so for a little bit of background, the I in what I was reading, that was Sadie. Sadie is the boyish-looking one. I think she's Ishama. And Evelyn is the femmy-looking one on the...
Right.
I don't know directions. on there, on the cover. Thank you. So, that's your context. And so, they have what we never get. They have a slow burn. It's delightful. If I do say so myself. So they get a slow burn. They get enemies to friends to lovers. Sadie has the best friend who's not romantically jealous because her best friend's asexual, but she's like, what are you doing with her? She's the enemy. Why are you doing that? So we get that trope. We get, I think, a bunch of sort of different things, and I tried to twist them as best I could, sort of own them as much as I could. So all of the animals talk, but none of them use their mouths to do so. They all communicate in ways that are very animal-like. All of the plants, too, communicate. The tree on the cover, on the bottom, see, I know that direction. On the bottom. Why was that so slow for y'all? So the tree is in
The
fact...
children's bookstore friends. Bookstore.
So the... Oh! I didn't get it until you said it. So...
What are we talking about?
So, the tree right there, she's actually a character. Her name is Doorbell. And Marcos was alluding to this before, but instead of doing a sort of Grandmother Willow, where she, opens her mouth, no offense to Grandmother Willow, right? But, she sort of forms a face and opens a mouth. Typically in Disney, they'll open their mouth, they'll speak, whether it's a plant or an animal. And my creatures don't do that. And that's something that Marcos really heavily influenced. And so, my trees, Doorbell, for example, will rumble. You have to sort of be touching her. And she'll rumble, and that's a language that you learn. Osley, you kind of heard the rabbit in the beginning. Qui will sort of, quiver her little limbs or make some scent changes that you have to learn to pick up on, things like that. So I tried to do, there's talking animals, there's fairies, but I tried to do a sort of twist that reflects, I guess, my animal-plant thoughts about this. So I tried to, I think, trope in a way that, again, that I don't really too often get to see.
So this is a question we did rehearse.
Oh, sweet.
Just to put it out there.
Just to test our friendship.
Just to test our friendship and to test your skills at being a teacher, right?
Raise mistakes.
Right. The genre of fantasy, right? Like, you have dragons, you have these deeply mythical worlds where there's centaurs, right? Trees that communicate through rumbling. I guess my question is, right, how did you manipulate the fantasy genre or come into it or want to even pursue it as like high fantasy if you even wanted to be that, to consider that?
Yeah.
Right, but you are including elements of fantasy in here, but you really do something radical and new with how you're presenting it. If we're talking about the pronouns or the expression of genders or how creatures are communicating and being together with one another, and your dragons are fire-breathing, villainous Game of Thrones dragons where they're destroying everything under the sun.
Very peaceful dragons.
So I would like to know, right, how do you think Luna falls into that, or maybe it challenges that?
So since you said dragons, I have to start with dragons. Thank you, Jason. Jason got me a dragon pen that he mandates that I sign books with. And I'll stick on Jason for a second. Everyone wants to get me dragon stuff, right? Because of what I'm writing. And so Jason hates me for this, and many other reasons too, because he can never get me. It's really easy to go buy fire-breathing dragons, or the little action figures of dragons that want to burn everything, right? And so he has to search to find me. He's nodding in sadness. He has to search to sort of find me action figures of dragons that are happy and that are, kind of chill. So one thing that's always been really important to me is, let dragons be happy. Almost in the same way that I look at media and I'm like, please don't kill the lesbian. Please let them be happy. I almost feel the same way about dragons in a lot of fantasy. And honestly, in terms of the rest of it, Melinda Lowe, if you haven't read all of her books, read all of them. Melinda Lowe sometimes writes sort of, I guess, horror-ish, like contemporary young adult suspense thrillery things, but also she often writes just straight up high fantasy. So Ash and Huntress are gorgeous, gorgeous books, and they, I think, inspire the crap out of me. They're very different. She creates very different worlds than what I create, but they are gorgeous. And I think I aspire, I worship at the feet of Melinda Lowe, and I aspire to sort of capture that magic, I think. That sense of reading being able to enable you to take flight. I think for me, that's what I aim for you to be able to read about the fairies flying or what have you, the dragons, and be able to be like, oh, well, I too am now flying at this current moment. And whatever my identity, like I'm allowed to identify with this and I'm allowed to take flight as well.
Yeah. And I think it definitely takes flight from, so much of, I love how you put it, right, taking flight from just the restrictions and the limitations that is our world, whether it's, our pronouns, how we identify, who we're able to love, right, where it's still present in Lunav, right, it's still present in the characters you have because those are tensions that, are universal, right, they happen everywhere, but I think you give us possibility in a lot of what is happening with Lunav. But I wanted you to talk more about the animals.
Did you know?
I did, and I was always fascinated by Jorah, obviously, but Osley too, and there's literally a glossary in the back of your book. You made a language. Jen made a language. Like, what? That's...
They made me add the glossary, towards the end, right near publication. They were like, so... glossary.
You created a language.
I tried.
Right, you created a language for Lunav, and tell me more about how that came to be, right? Why you wanted to do that to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what I tried to take was words that are really commonplace. My poor darling editor had to put up with so much capitalization because I would take a lot of words. Dreaming is one of them. Marcos kept referencing dreaming. Obviously, that's how the passage that I read sort of ended, right? Oh, holy crap! This kid can dream. I can too. Oh crap! Right? And so, dreaming you'll see is capitalized. There are different things that get to me almost taking regular concepts that we have in this world and almost elevating them to something that's magical. I think I was really sort of trying to take things that we almost take for granted, the way that we walk across grass. You might have noticed that Sadie always seeks permission and consent before she, walks across grass. And so for me, taking concepts, taking things that are normal, that we do every night, that we dream, that we walk across grass, that we do whatever, and transforming that into something that we're actually actively thinking about was super, super important for me. And I think with the animals, I just kind of wanted, to respect the way that they already have language. And so for me, it's really easy to pop an animal's mouth open and be like, hey, you're talking, it's fantasy, woo! Which is totally fine, totally okay. But for me, I wanted to take a look at the way that they move and the way that they work with scent and the way that they work with sound and touch. And I sort of wanted, if you can't tell, I'm a very tactile person, and so I sort of wanted to preserve that in the animal's little world that I tried to create.
Yeah, I think that's something that I found captivating about Lunav, right, is that there is attention to detail, such attention to detail that I admire and that I wish I could do as a writer.
He does.
Where I just make really broad statements. Let's just make the broad statements.
His book is my favorite book I've ever read.
So I really admired that you crafted this world with all of this in mind, and there's so much in it, right? And you created a language out of it, and that's something I look forward to with your future projects. But it's something, right, if we talk about creating a world, I want to turn to Lost Boy, Found Boy for a minute, right? The novella that Jen also wrote.
Oops.
Let's talk about that for a little bit. Tell us more about Lost Boy Found Boy?
So, if this is my baby that I've been, laboring with for 4 or 5 years, Lost Boy is sort of my accidental child. So Lost Boy was completely an accident. My publisher, Nine Star Press, was soliciting short stories that were not at all short stories for an anthology. What I mean by that is that they were long. Short stories tend to be, 8,000 words or so, and they were like, submit to us short stories for queer fairy tale retellings. And 15 to 25,000 words, and I was like, that's not short. So I submitted, and I got this email from my editor, because he encouraged me to submit. I told him the premise, and I'll tell you the premise too in a second. So I told him the premise, he's like, yeah, totally, finish it and submit it. So I do. I submit it, and if any of you are also, actually know that a few of you are writers, so when you submit things, I don't want to activate you here, but so close your ears. So a lot of times when you get rejection emails, it's like, sometimes they're form emails, and they have nothing to do with you, right? But sometimes they have a little bit of like, yeah, I read this, I'm rejecting anyway. And so what often is the formula is, I loved your world building, I loved your character, but it's just not for me, right? And so this is what rejection letters are. And so my editor sends me an email about Lost Boy Found Boy, and he goes, oh man, I love the concept, I love the retelling, I love your world building, but we can't have it for the anthology. And I'm like, well, screw you too. And so his next line is, we don't want it for the anthology because we want to make it a novella, like its own book. And I was like, honey, you could have led with that. So, Lost Boy is much easier for me to describe and talk about than Lunov, oddly. Probably because I'm a little too close to my precious ones. But Lunov, the easiest way to describe it is a lesbian fairy tale, right? And then I think my other favorite way to describe Lunov is that it's a world where dragons grow on trees, right? And for me, I think that's my favorite part, which is sort of what Marcos and I were dancing around, like animals, plants, right? Dragons grow on friggin' trees. And so that's, I think, my favorite way to describe Lunov. It has nothing to do with the plot. Actually, it has a lot to do with the plot. A lot. It has nothing to do with the plot that you can say in one easy sentence. But with Lost Boy, I think because it's a retelling, you sort of have an easier time. So let's see if I can do it. So Lost Boy Found Boy is a sci-fi retelling of Peter Pan, in which Neverland is a hollow matrix, Hook is a cyborg, and Tink is an automated computer interface. So there's that. So Lost Boy, I think... So Lost Boy came from me coming out, largely. So I came out as gay so many years ago, but Lost Boy came out of me coming out as non-binary and as transmasculine, because Peter is a trans boy, his love interest is non-binary, and so the story sort of, he creates Neverland to save the child that he has a crush on, because the child he has a crush on just really wants to fly. Just at any cost, he really wants to fly. It's futuristic, it's sci-fi, he really wants to fly, and the only way he can access flying, or they can access flying, is through joining the military, right? So they do, and Peter is like, oh no, I will in fact program you an entire world, and that world will be Neverland. And so they go off to their military, to their flying, and Peter's like, no, I'm gonna get you back by building Neverland for you, right? And so I think Neverland was an homage to sort of me working through what it means to sort of go through relationships and what you create for yourself when you're coming out as non-binary. And Mir is not the prospective character. They're sort of the love interest perpetually. They're the desired human. But I think at the same time, Peter, sort of again, you sort of reference this with Lunov, everybody's kind of casually queer. No one has to come out, no one has to whatever. They're just sort of like, yes, Yes, indeed, hello.
Peter, get over it.
So it's sort of like real chill, real normal. And that was also important to me, to create this futuristic world that was in fact dystopian, but that also sort of let Peter and Mir live at the same time as it was dystopian. So that was very important to me.
And I think it was really impressive
Was it?
as a writer. Yes. Where, like, such range, right? You go from this high fantasy world that is all you, right? It's literally from beginning to end is your creation. To right, like I'm gonna take. Was it Disney? It wasn't Disney's. It was some old British white guy from like the 1900s.
J.M. Barrie.
You're right.
I don't know that because of Finding
And
Neverland.
you're like, I can take this story, you know, that is super heterosexual, and turn it, you know, into what you turned it into. And it was also science fiction. I love science fiction. Like, I'm the biggest science fiction nerd around. Oh, let me tell you. So, like that, you know, it's exciting because for all of us, we get to see what comes next. And I think that is what, you know, I want to leave us with today with this, at least for our part of the conversation, right? That what is to come next is really exciting. And I'm really excited to see what comes next with it.
Here's what comes next. So, I'm going to read you a pitsy bit of Lost Boy. Interestingly, the first scene of Lunov that I ever wrote is in the sequel. You will not read the first scene that I ever wrote of Lunov because it's not in this book. But the first scene that I ever wrote from Lost Boy, Found Boy is right here. It is smack in the middle of the thing. And it's right here. By way of context, Peter, once he gets to Neverland, starts opening portals in Neverland to sort of suck in different people because he just wants Mir. He's like, I'm gonna get them here, and I'm just gonna make these portals to like try and get them here. And so this is his first portal attempt. So if you're like, what is a portal? That's what a portal is. So by the time he got the portal to rip itself open, his neck was aching with a burn from a sun that shouldn't have been able to burn, and the moon, the same one Mir had blown up in Peter's dream, was the only thing lighting the island, the calculations pouring out of his lips and into the sky above him. There, the portal looked like a black hole. It certainly felt like one. It roared and sucked wind and water in. Peter had to dig his feet in the sand to avoid getting yanked into the hole he'd created, just above his eye level, in the air itself. Peter tried to shift, tried to reach for interface, curled up on the sand a few feet away from him, in sleep mode, wings tucked into the sides like a beetle or maybe like a fairy. But the wind pulling from the portal was too strong, until it wasn't. Until the suffocating pull of air into nothingness stopped, as abruptly as Peter had fallen in love with Mir all those rotations ago. He fell to the sand, on his backside. The portal heaved and trembled and glowed, brighter than the brightest butterfly he'd yet seen on Neverland. A shuddering and metallic clacking rang out in Peter's very bones. Someone was climbing out of the portal. Peter scuttled backwards on his hands and feet, looking for all the world like one of those strange creatures he and Mir had seen in the Natural History Museum. Crab. He found the word in his head dimly, even as nervous horror flooded him at who, or what, was emerging from the portal. Neverland needs crabs. And then, all other thoughts were blotted from his mind as the portal gave one final shudder, one final whir of electric light, reflecting eerily off the moon-drenched beach. Mir? He whispered in a small voice, daring despite himself to be hopeful. He squinted up as his pupils dilated, trying to adjust to the now dead light of the hole in the air. But the figure that filled the ethereal opening of the tunnel was too tall to be Mir, too lithe and his hair too stringy, too straight. Peter flipped himself upward, not bothering to wipe the gritty sand from his hands as he shuffled closer in a crouch toward the portal. A gasp tore through him as a flash of silver caught his eye, and he was crawling backward again as the emerging figure seemed to cast an anchor of some kind onto the nebulous rim of the portal. What the? For it wasn't a hand pulling the first newcomer into Neverland. It was a hook. Wow. So that was the first thing I wrote for that little thing. For those of you who are like, we're here for Luna, what the heck is this Lost Boy Found Boy thing? So because it's so short, because it's a novella, it's only available as an ebook from my publisher. Happily, when you buy Lunov, come see me. I'll sign it for you. And I will also give you this nifty thing with which you can download Lost Boy Found Boy for now. You're welcome. Actually, thank my publisher, not me. So, all right, well, you know what? I'm sorry, you already bought it. So, that was that. Are we gonna
I just
open?
want to mention that you need to do an audiobook. Because you were just
We want to for accessibility reasons.
keep talking.
This is what we're like on the beach. It's disgusting.
It's like Chihuahua, I said that.
It is,
Whatever. Blind lawyer sometimes. Anyway,
On that happy note,